Today I'm going to show you how to put together a pretty basic air valve that you can use with a single speed blower to control the volume of air that reaches your forge. This valve allows the fan to run at full speed and handle the volume of air that it's supposed to be handling, and yet gives you infinite control over the amount of air that's going to your forge. So here's what the valve looks like on the inside. It's basically just a wooden box, and I have two sets of guides on both side panels of the box. The large pipe on the left is coming from the blower, and the small pipe on the right is going to the forge. The valve actually has two movable components. This is the actual valve that you're going to be moving, and that's going to direct the airflow either to the forge or out of the system. I have this made out of sheet metal, but you can make this totally out of wood if you want. All the valve needs to do is to cut the air supply going to the forge and have a sloped face to help direct the air out of the system. The smaller plate is adjustable, and it's used to fine-tune the timing of the valve. In other words, the position of this plate determines when the valve is going to start dumping air out of the system. So when you're setting up your fan for the first time, you're going to need to move this plate in and out to figure out where you're getting the best performance. Once you've determined that position, you can lock this plate down permanently because you'll never have to move it as long as you're using that same fan. The only part that gets adjusted while you're using the forge is the main valve plate. I made the box for the valve out of plywood just to illustrate that you don't always need to be welding all this stuff together. Wood is very serviceable in a lot of applications. You just have to be careful how you position this in the forge. Obviously, while it's running, there's no chance for it to heat up because you're going to have a fan blowing through it all the time. But when you shut down for the night, if this box is too close to your fire pot and you don't shut down your fire by wetting it down, the heat could transfer back and cause a fire hazard, so you have to keep that in mind. To cut the holes for the two pipes, I've just drilled a number of smaller holes through the wood, and I'm using a chisel to rough out the opening. I'm not going to be using any fittings for the pipe going to the forge, so I'm just going to make sure that it has a tight fit in the front panel. The elbow fitting that comes from the blower to the back panel of the forge gets screwed to the surface of the plywood, so I don't even need to have a clean opening for that. As long as there's enough room for the air to pass through, it's fine. And again, these directions are aimed at people that are just starting out and don't have a lot of equipment. Obviously, if you have a welder and a plasma cutter and or even a lathe to help you build this thing, by all means use them. But this just shows how you can get going without using a lot of equipment, but still wind up with a very usable forge. Now, the one thing I haven't discussed in this video, because it's really something that you're going to have to tailor to your individual forge setup, is the handle that you need to attach to the valve so that you can slide it back and forth. Now, I would recommend some kind of a lever system where the handle end of the lever moves, say, 5 or 6 inches, and that results in only a couple of inches of movement on the other side of the pivot point. That will give you the range of motion that you need and the accuracy that you need to adjust this valve. The other option, which is the simplest, is just to attach a long handle to the valve so that it reaches to the outside of the forge, and then you can just slide the valve in and out that way. In either case, you need to build in a little bit of resistance in the handle so that when you move the valve, it just stays where you leave it. If you don't build in enough resistance and you're using a very powerful fan, the air pressure inside the system can actually move the valve. So you want to make sure that it stays wherever you leave it.